Agnico Eagle just put $4.3 million into this gold development story. They have resources in a couple different jurisdictions in Canada. They're growing through the drill bit and recently through acquisitions. This is Fury Gold Mines, and today I'm joined by the CEO, Tim Clark. Enjoy.
This is Jay Martin.
All right, here I am with Tim Clark, CEO of Fury Gold Mines. Tim, it's great to have you back in the program.
Jay, awesome to be here. It's long overdue.
Yeah, it's like an entirely new market since the last time I had you on the show. So, I mean, tons to talk about. Man, you guys got a lot going on at Fury Gold Mines. Recent merger, lots of project updates. But before we get into that, before I hit record here, you and I were kind of jamming on just like market sentiment and what investors are looking for in the gold sector. You've been in this business a long time prior to Fury. How do you read the gold market right now, Tim? Like, what's standing out front and center for you?
I mean, look, the gold market to me is the big macro call. I think a lot of people get way too focused on the minutia, and it's big overall trends. And the truth of the matter is, I think the dollar's in trouble. I think China's coming for us. I think commodities are where it's at. Gold is the currency that no one controls, and this is the total desire for it. I think gold's going a lot higher. Maybe we see a bit of a sort of a correction here. I don't think so. What's key to me here, though, really is it's not just the gold price. It's everybody's playing the gold price, riding the gold price up until a point. What they've missed are the equities. And even these producers that have been up a lot, they're not nearly up enough in terms of where they historically have been relative to the price of gold, because the gold trade is still on.
Right.
And once the gold, it doesn't need to top, it just needs to slow down. And people will view less return on the upside for the risks they're taking, and they'll roll into the other derivative. What's amazing is if the gold price stays even just flat or within this range, the producers are going to crush it on their margins. Mm-hmm. And investors have got to understand, like, they got to put it somewhere. So what they'll do is they'll give you some dividends, they'll buy back some shares. We both know that they're not going to overly do that because they've done that before. And what they're going to do is pay down their debt. And then when they get the extra free cash flow, they're going to buy assets. And and what you do when you see, so even in an inflationary environment or when costs start to catch up, the first thing producers do is they buy big land packages and they consolidate. And so if you believe the gold price is going to stay here, go higher, you believe in consolidation of the industry because they need to replace the ounces. And that's going to create an M&A environment for the small caps and the juniors and the mid caps. Where I think has been interesting from my perspective on the corporate side is I've seen a lot of the big producers do a lot more work, like looking at assets, than the mid caps have done. But the mid caps are now starting to catch up. So like when I was at Beaver Creek a year and a half ago, most of the meetings were looking at our assets by larger companies, not the mid cap companies. And I think what a lot of it has to do is the same thing on the financial institution side. The Fidelities and the Prudentials and big companies out there, they do the work first because they got more people. and the mid cap investors take time because they have fewer analysts. Same thing that I see on this side. There's a lag, and the lag is starting to catch up, and we're getting a lot more mid cap companies looking at us from an asset perspective. And we got a lot of interest first for Committee Bay because it's big land, big swing.
Yeah.
And then now we're getting it for Eau Claire because what their mid caps are looking for are really good infrastructure where they can achieve high margins. And that doesn't have to be as big a project, but if they can make high margins, that's what they're going to want to get. And I'll tell you, a lot of what we see are a lot of the Aussies because I think they are a great mining jurisdiction, as is Canada. The difference is the premiums run higher there. Pension fund money is captured more in the country, and they've scoured their assets. And, if you get a 2 million ounce near surface asset, it's already been built. Where Canada, there's a lot more opportunity at cheaper costs. And I think that's interesting for people.
So you referenced a couple of your assets that have been getting interest from mid caps and majors, and obviously you've raised money from Agnico Eagle. They're a 9.9% shareholder of your company. What is it? So when I see Fury today, I'm like, you're kind of in that sweet spot where you have a resource measured and indicated in Eau Claire, and a resource with Committee Bay as well, and with Eleonore South, or not yet. We're still exploration stage there, but
still exploration stage.
Yeah. Okay, but two resources to begin, and that's where I'm seeing investor sentiment go next, right? Because as you mentioned, a lot of the majors share prices have appreciated to at least 52-week, if not all-time highs in nominal dollars, not relative to the gold price, which is great context. I'm glad you brought that up because you're right. You could look at the price performance of a lot of these major mining companies and say they're at all-time highs, but not even close in gold terms, gold-denominated terms.
You're absolutely right. Yeah.
And the cash is now trickling down mid-tier producers, junior producers, the funded developers, then the unfunded developers. And, I tell my audience what we want to look for right now is the exploration companies that are moving towards development. They have a resource, they've found it, right? And now we're learning more about it. We're answering all the unanswered questions. So maybe I want to run through your project by project. Let's start with Eau Claire, James Bay, Quebec. You're 57 kilometers south of the Eleonore mine, which is Newmont's project.
Quick correction: Newmont just sold it and they closed it. And Dhilmar, which is a
Indonesia company, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Walk me through that. I'd love to know more about that, Tim.
No. Listen. I think, and this is where investors would find this. To me, I find this fascinating. But it's Newmont. I knew when they bought Newcrest, they needed to raise a couple $2 billion in cash, and what they wanted to do was get out of a bunch of their assets in North America, which were 3 in Canada and a couple in the US, Newmont being the largest. And so they basically held the market up a little bit. And when I was at the BMO conference and chatting with my friends, I used to work at BMO for a long time, and they said, well, we apologize that there hasn't been any M&A because everybody's been waiting for the Newmont deals to close. It was like the biggest asset sale in quite a while. What would happen is you'd have 10 or 15 companies looking at these assets, and no one was out buying other stuff because they were waiting to find out whether they got them or not. Anyway, long story short is Eleonore was the largest, I think, of their assets, went for just under $800 million to this Indonesian group called Dhilmar, and they had bought another asset from Newmont a couple of years ago. What I gather is they want to be a 2 million ounce producer, and they've got quite a bit of capital to invest. And they came in and they closed the deal about 2 months ago, I think, 2-3 months ago. And they've got a very heavy exploration project right now. So if you think about the Eleonore asset itself, if you buy something with 5 to 7 year mine life, where's the opportunity to really earn ROE? And basically it's if you can extend that 5 to 7 year mine life to say 10 to 14, right? If you can double your exploration, all of a sudden your returns really start coming in. So if you look at a map of the James Bay area, they're by far the largest producing, or the only producing mill, and you've got a few scattered companies around it. Where we come in is we have the largest land package of any junior now after our acquisition of Quebec Precious Metals this winter. And we kind of have a semicircle of property around the Eleonore mine. And if you believe, like I said earlier, that consolidation makes sense for majors, that there could be, a land consolidation play there.
Interesting.
And that's really the crux of that Quebec property. In the meantime, we have a lot of exploration, and I think we were talking to a company that was looking at James Bay recently. The perception is the James Bay is relatively new area. It hasn't been a ton of discovery relative to other areas because it was hard to get to. But with the James Bay Hydro Project, it actually produces all electricity to go to sort of Quebec and down to New England and the US. There is tons of roads and power sources, and that's now attracting investors because going up into the middle of a mountain top and assuming that you capex isn't going to be that much is kind of a farce at this point. And again, these things aren't just about big swings. It's about how much money you can make on the money you put in.
Yeah. Okay.
Anyway, that's a little off track, but
no, but it's interesting, and I've been watching Indonesia really closely, mainly their nickel industry, right? And this country is making a play right now to be a major influence in the commodities business. So this acquisition of Eleonore is interesting. You've got two projects. You're as you mentioned, you're kind of circling this area. Eleonore South is right adjacent to this property. But before we get into that, let's just run through Eau Claire. Over 1 million ounce resource there, measured and indicated, 5.6 grams per ton on average. Walk somebody who's just coming into the Fury story, Tim, through the Eau Claire deposit.
Sure. So it's we have 1.88 million ounces on the property. It's about 1.6 in the Eau Claire resource itself. And then we've created a maiden resource with Percival that's added a couple 100,000 ounces into it. It's about 14 kilometers to the east. They can connect it with the Winter Road, and all the chemistry works. The concept is that it's high grade, and it's not 2 million, but it's showing a pathway to 2 million.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the kind of magic number that producers in the mid-cap size are kind of like looking for it. And I think it brings up another theme where I've talked about this with some of the corporate larger companies, is where do they go from here in terms of big mines? They're just hard to find big mines, if not impossible, going forward. And that there has been a sentiment sort of view that these companies need to look at the mid-cap size assets and figure out how to make them profitable enough and buy multiple ones to supplant what they're producing out of the big ones, because they're just not going to find the big ones. So I think that in reality, everybody wants to find these big exciting mines, and there's all these exploration companies, but there's a fair amount of mid-cap size ones that could be converted at a profitable rate to replace those. So Eau Claire is one of those. And I think Eau Claire, the property itself we've identified another 14 anomalies across the property that have the same signature, the same chemistry. It's all in the same structure, this Canard deformation zone. So the bottom side of the property runs for 30 kilometers. And there's a Canard deformation zone that sort of is that property boundary line that runs for about 100 kilometers. And all these targets have sort of situated around that structure, including Eau Claire. And Eau Claire, I was just up there last week, and what I like about it is you can literally drive to the property. You can actually pull an 18-wheeler right up to the edge of the property because the road is so good. And it's all part of that James Bay Hydro project. The Billy Bishop Highway that brings you up into the area is all paved. And then you come into the property and you have to go over a giant electrical spillway. It's enormous. It's like 5 stories tall. And then you go right on the property. You can drive right into camp. And then you can take a 4-wheeler right up on top of the resource and look out over the whole area. And we got a nice camp there. And there's been a lot of drilling, a lot of core. And so we're kind of starting to feel like the comment that I get most of the time is, where are you going to go from here? Because investors are starting to pay for companies that are moving into development that show a pathway to production. That's where I think investors are starting to invest in. Exploration is still viewed as higher risk, and a lot of people want to de-risk it. And I think it'll move into the exploration, but that's what a lot of investors want to see me push that forward, that Eau Claire project forward.
Yeah, makes sense. So in terms of sticking with Eau Claire for now, near term news flow, Tim, prospective shareholders, what can they expect to see from you?
Well, the nice thing about Fury is we've got a bunch of different properties, and one of the properties that we bought this spring, called Quebec Precious Metals, it was a $40 million company 2 years ago. We bought it for $4 million, and it's doubled our land package. So we're going up. It's a piece called Sakami. It doesn't have a resource, but we think there's potential for a resource up there with not a lot of drilling. And so we've got about a 3,000 to 5,000 meter program that we started this past week. I think we're probably into the second hole by now. And so we're actively drilling in an area that's had some good success with good, ounces and meters. And so if we can go up there and show some extension on a new discovery, that would be fabulous. At the same time, we're mobilizing to go back up to Committee Bay.
Yeah.
A lot of my investors have wanted us to go back up the last 3 or 4 years. It wasn't the greatest market, but now it's changed. And what we were kind of waiting for, Jay, to be honest, is to go up with a partner, because for a junior company our size to go up there and assume we're going to spend $10 million every year on our own is a lot. And what we wanted was also, when you go up there, who's going to buy it? Like, where is this thing going to end up? And look, my relationships with Agnico go way back, as well as my chairman, who actually still consults there. And I think that the idea was, we felt, given the portfolio of Agnico, that this might fit in with their pipeline. And so we pitched that idea, and they liked what we have done with the preparation last summer and where the drilling has come in the past 10 years. And so they put in money into a strategic investment into Fury and basically paid for the whole project this summer. And on top of that, we're able to have the money to stage fuel for next year.
Interesting. Okay, so this was 4.3 million that Agnico put in like a month and a half ago,
Right.
Something about around there. And you guys have 3 rigs, is that right, at Committee Bay? Is that correct?
So we own 3 rigs, and I'm not sure how many they're going to be using at the same time. I think it's maybe one at the moment. We're going to do 3,000 to 5,000 meters, and then we're going to go after 3 bluffs, which is where we have a 1.3 million ounce resource, and we're going to test this whole shear zone theory that we have versus iron formations, and then we're going to go out to Raven, and we've looked at some ground last summer where guys were picking up 30-gram samples on the surface, and no one's put a drill in there. So we're going to go do that too. And the idea is, we want to show that our sort of strategy or thesis about these share zones exists. And then we want to show that there's potential for more discovery on this property. It's a huge property. It's 300-kilometer greenstone belt. It's an hour north of Baker Lake. It's got a full camp with a 100-person camp with a runway. We got tons of equipment. And what Agnico liked most was that we had shown we were very disciplined in our spending, and our cost per meter up there is far below everybody else's, because we own a lot of our own equipment.
Yeah. Okay. So we covered none of it, which is Committee Bay. We talked about James Bay with Eau Claire, Eleonore, your recent transaction. And we got drills spinning right now at your new properties after
Sakami.
Sorry?
That's Sakami. That's the
Yes,
CAM.
that's a CAMI via the new transaction with Quebec Precious Metals. Amazing discount on that deal. $4 million transaction, by the way. Can we expect any news from Eleonore South this summer, Tim?
So we did put out some news recently along with Quebec Precious Metals. We drilled there this winter, and we put basically a dozen holes in there, and we saw identified sort of like what we wanted to see in the targeting and whatnot. We didn't have the success we wanted, but as my geologist pointed out, that this is by far just the beginning. It's a big property. It's a 3 kilometer by 2 kilometer anomaly, and we just put in something this winter to get things going. The interesting part about the Eleonore South property is there's been historic drilling up in the northeast next to Sirios, and we've had this recent drilling, but there's also some targets in the middle of the property. And again, I go back to Dhilmar and what they're going to do. This actually abuts their land. They share the property line with us, and I'm not sure, what their interest would be down the road. But again, what we want to do is sit down with the Dhilmar guys and see their plans going forward and kind of compare them to ours and develop a relationship there. We haven't sat down with them yet. I hear good things, and I hear they're very active. And again, I put on my capital markets hat and say to myself, where do all these properties end up? And I probably have the same conclusion what everybody else thinks, is that there could be an opportunity here, but we'll find out soon enough. And as far as Eleonore South is concerned, it's still a big target-rich environment for us. We just see a lot of low-hanging fruit at this Quebec Precious Metals.
Okay.
And clearly we see a lot of opportunity up at Committee Bay, which is where I think the big swing is.
Okay. Yeah.
I think everybody should be watching that news there in particular.
Okay.
And then what we want to do is get back to Eau Claire in the fall at some point, and we're trying to come to a decision about what kind of drilling we want to see there, whether this asset we need to do more drilling around that. We've had some feedback from producers to keep adding ounces and whatnot, and then also there's a lot of anomalies. We only went after one anomaly on that property, and we hit at serendipity, but we haven't tested the other 12 to 14 of them.
All right, that's clear to me and makes sense. We're going to watch what Agnico's looking for with this recent investment in Committee Bay up in Nunavut. Let me ask you, how strategic has your position in Dolly Varden been? Obviously, since the transaction with the homestake property, you've had this option, right, in the portfolio. I got to imagine it's been quite useful from a cash standpoint.
Well, yeah. Well, it's, I keep telling everybody it's amazing. When you have money, it allows you to take money when you want to at good pricing versus being forced to. So that's been a huge help. And what we viewed it as is a resource for our treasury. And I'm on the board of Dolly. I believe that Sean is doing a great job, and they have a lot of upside there. And right now, I think we have about 53 million in equity. Mm-hmm. We started with 45 million, and we've taken about 20 million off. Yeah. So I think, as one investor pointed out, he goes, it used to make up 75% of your market cap. Now it makes up, like 49 or 48%. So, investors who are looking at Fury do get the exposure to Dolly, but not as much as they did. I still think that we're being valued as a legitimate, good junior high-grade gold company with assets, and then we have a treasury. Yeah. It's not the other way around. It's not that our enterprise value is based on our Dolly position. I think it doesn't matter whether we had 20 million or 50 million, we get the same sort of valuation. And but how we're going to handle that is we're just going to continue to clip coupons off of it. We're not in a rush. We've taken money over the last couple of years, sort of opportunistically, around when we need it and when we have places to put it. And the goal here is obviously not to own another company like this kind of much valuation, but the stock keeps going up, so we keep getting more every time we sell it. So
Yeah.
that's been the goal, is to kind of get it off and on its own and let them run on their own. And we have done a lot of work in terms of looking at other companies, M&A and evaluations. And so we're trying to figure out places to put it on top of the drilling.
Yep.
We would have probably sold more shares this year to go up to Committee Bay, but Agnico stepped in and picked up the ticket. I think that was a good investment to bring in a potential buyer. And a company like Agnico was a big plus. So I think investors should be kind of excited where this company's going.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I don't know, from my perspective, that's worked out so well. Massive option on liquidity. Dolly's now trading on the NYSE. It's great. Like, what an amazing place to have an option on a treasury like this. And allows you to go back for capital without dilution. I imagine it looks like it's worked out very well. So, but near-term news flow, obviously the two big catalysts we're going to be watching are the Committee Bay work program on the heels of the Agnico Eagle investment of $4.3 million. We're now up and running up there. And obviously the new transaction with Quebec Precious Metals. We don't know what's there yet, but it's obviously you're quite excited about it. You feel like that's where the low-hanging fruit is.
Well, we even picked up a nice little gem in there. There's a rare earth play called Kippawa, and
Yeah.
who knows what that thing's worth. It didn't cost us a thing. We weren't going after it for that, and we all of a sudden, in the middle of a big rare earth kind of political scene in the U.S.,
Yeah.
we own the only, I think, rare earth resource in North America with a full feasibility study on it. And so we're going after that too.
Okay. So stay tuned for Kippawa. All right. Appreciate this, Tim. I feel like you guys have been grinding away in a bad market for a long time, and now suddenly things are aligning and you find yourself in the right place at the right time. I'm excited to cover the story over the next couple quarters, see where this goes. We'll be looking out for news flow this summer, late summer, and then into the fall, what you decide to do back up in James Bay with Eau Claire and Eleonore South. But I appreciate you coming on the show today, Tim, and I look forward to the next time.
Awesome, Jay. Thank you so much.
All right.